I stood there in my simple dress, clutching my laptop like a lifeline as my stepsister Serafina pulled Damon Cross closer to her side at the family BBQ. Her eyes burned with contempt as she pointed at me and announced to everyone within earshot, "This is Anya Thorne, our family's biggest failure." The laughter that followed from my father Victor and stepmother Cassandra felt like a physical blow. But then, Damon, the man Serafina had been introducing as her boss all afternoon, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He turned to Serafina, his smile fading into something cold and professional. "That's interesting," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet patio. "Because you're fired." The world seemed to freeze. Serafina's face went white. Cassandra dropped her salad bowl. Victor's grilling tongs clattered to the ground. My younger half-sister Willow's phone slipped from her hands, the screen shattering on the concrete, and I lifted my head, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story of how I finally took back my power from a toxic family, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to cut off family members who treated you like garbage. Your support means everything. Now let me take you back to where this all really began. My mother Linda died on a Tuesday in March when I was 17 years old. I remember every detail of that day with the kind of clarity that trauma burns into your memory. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and dying flowers. The machines beeped their steady rhythm until suddenly they didn't. The doctor came in with that look on his face, the one that said everything before he opened his mouth. Cancer had taken her in 6 brutal months from diagnosis to death, leaving me hollow and lost in a world that suddenly made no sense. Dad, Victor Thorne, took it hard. At least that's what I thought at the time. He stopped going to work as regularly. He sat in his study with a glass of scotch and stared at the wall where Mom's portrait hung. He barely spoke to me beyond the practical necessities of living. "Can you pick up groceries? Did you pay the electric bill?" Your mother would have remembered to do that. For 6 months, we existed as ghosts in that house, circling each other in our grief, never quite connecting, but never fully alone either. I thought maybe this was our chance to become closer. I was wrong about so many things back then. Mom had been the glue. She was the one who remembered my favorite foods, who asked about my day at school, who sat with me while I did homework and told me stories about her own childhood. She was the one who promised me that college was in my future, that I was smart enough, good enough, destined for something better than this small-town existence. She had started a college fund for me when I was born. She showed it to me, once opened the statements and pointed to the growing numbers. "This is your future, Anya," she had said. "This is your ticket out and up." I held on to that promise like a lifeline after she died. 6 months after her funeral, Victor brought Cassandra home. I'll never forget that evening. It was a Sunday, late September, and the leaves were just starting to turn. I was in my room doing calculus homework when I heard the front door open and unfamiliar voices downstairs. Female voices. Plural. I came down to find a woman in the living room, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer jeans, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and next to her, a girl about 11 years old with the same blonde hair and the same calculating look. "Anya, sweetheart," my father said, and the term of endearment felt strange coming from him after months of cold silence. "This is Cassandra. We've been seeing each other for a few months, and this is her daughter Serafina." Seeing each other for a few months, while Mom had been dead for 6. The math wasn't hard to do, but I was 17 and grieving and desperate for any kind of normalcy, so I pushed the uncomfortable questions aside. I smiled. I said hello. Serafina looked me up and down like she was appraising a piece of used furniture and then turned away without returning my greeting. They moved in 2 weeks later. Cassandra brought her things in expensive luggage and boxes from high-end stores. Serafina brought an attitude that filled every room she entered. Within a month, the house had been redecorated. Mom's pictures came down from most of the walls. Her favorite blue couch was replaced with something sleek and modern. Her garden, which she had tended every weekend, was paved over for a new patio. It was like watching my mother be erased from her own home one detail at a time. The differences in how Serafina and I were treated started almost immediately, but they were subtle at first. Small things that I told myself didn't matter. Cassandra would ask Serafina what she wanted for dinner and then make it without consulting me. If I spoke up with a preference, I'd get a tight smile and a, maybe next time, sweetie. Serafina got the bigger bedroom, the one with the walk-in closet and attached bathroom. When I asked why she got to move into the guest room while I stayed in my childhood room with its twin bed and shared bathroom, Cassandra said, well, she's adjusting to a new home. We need to make this transition easy for her. As if I wasn't also adjusting to an entirely new family dynamic. The financial disparities became obvious within a few months. Serafina started ballet lessons at an expensive studio across town, private lessons, not group classes. When I mentioned that I'd always wanted to learn an instrument, maybe take piano lessons like I'd asked Mom about before she got sick, Victor said we needed to watch our spending. Money's tight right now, Anya. We need to prioritize. 2 weeks later, a baby grand piano was delivered to the living room for Serafina, because Cassandra's mother had been a pianist and it was important to carry on family traditions. The clothing situation was perhaps the most visible marker of my new status in the family. Serafina got shopping trips to the mall bags from stores I'd only ever walked past. Nordstrom, Anthropologie, Free People. Her closet filled with new jeans, cute tops, dresses for every occasion. My closet filled with her hand-me-downs. Things that didn't quite fit styles that weren't quite my taste clothes that came with the faint scent of her perfume and the unspoken message that I existed to receive her cast-offs. When I asked Dad if I could have some money for new school clothes, he handed me $50 and told me to shop the clearance racks. I watched Cassandra hand Serafina a credit card that same week. But the moments that really carved out pieces of my soul were smaller, more intimate, more devastating in their casual cruelty. I remember the first time I saw Cassandra make Serafina's lunch for school. It was a Tuesday morning, about 3 months after they'd moved in. I was running late, hadn't had time for breakfast, and I rushed into the kitchen hoping to grab something quick. Cassandra was at the counter, carefully cutting the crusts off white bread, arranging deli turkey and cheese, just so cutting the sandwich into a perfect heart shape. She added a chocolate chip cookie, an individual bag of Serafina's favorite chips, a juice box, and a handwritten note on pink stationery that said, "Have a wonderful day, my beautiful girl. Love, Mom." I stood there watching my stomach growling and finally asked, "Could you maybe make my lunch too? I'm really late and I don't have time." Cassandra looked up at me, and for just a second I saw something flicker across her face. Annoyance, maybe, or just the realization that I was there existing, requiring attention. She sighed, pulled out 2 slices of bread, slapped some peanut butter between them, wrapped the sandwich in a brown paper bag, and slid it across the counter without a word. No cookie, no chips, no note. Serafina watched this entire exchange from her seat at the breakfast nook, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. That smile said everything. It said, "You see where you stand. You see who matters here." I took my peanut butter sandwich and went to school, and I didn't complain because I told myself it didn't matter. It was just lunch. But it wasn't just lunch. It was a daily reminder of my place in the new family hierarchy. The academic year when I was 17 was brutal. I was trying to maintain my grades, prepare for college applications, and navigate this new family dynamic that felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Dad had stopped attending my school events. Mom had never missed a single parent-teacher conference, every choir concert, every academic award ceremony. After she died, Dad had tried for a while. He'd shown up to a few things, sat in the back looking uncomfortable. But once Cassandra came along, he stopped coming entirely. He went to every single one of Serafina's ballet recitals, though. I know because I heard them talking about it, saw the programs left on the kitchen counter, watched them get dressed up and leave while I sat home alone. There was one particular evening that crystallized everything. It was late April, about 7 months after Cassandra and Serafina moved in, 2 years after Mom died. I had been selected to receive the Academic Excellence Award at the Spring Honor Ceremony. It was a big deal, only given to the top 5 students in the junior class. I was so proud. I had worked so hard to maintain my grades while grieving Mom, adjusting to the new family, and trying to hold myself together. I told Dad about it at dinner. Actually, I announced it to the table, hoping for some recognition, some acknowledgement that I was still here and still achieving things. "That's nice, honey," Dad said, not looking up from his phone. Cassandra made a humming sound that could have been agreement or could have been indigestion. Serafina rolled her eyes. The ceremony was on a Tuesday evening at 7. I left the invitation on the kitchen counter with the date circled in red marker. The day of the ceremony, I got ready with shaking hands. I put on my nicest dress, the navy blue one that Mom had bought me for her company Christmas party a year before she got sick. I did my hair and makeup carefully. I came downstairs at 6:30 expecting to find my family ready to go. Instead, I found Dad in jeans and Cassandra in yoga pants. "Oh, honey," Cassandra said with exaggerated sympathy. "We can't make it tonight. Serafina has a very important ballet rehearsal for her spring showcase. It's the dress rehearsal, the only one before the actual performance. We absolutely cannot miss it." I looked at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sorry, Anya. This is important for Serafina. You understand." I wanted to scream that this was important for me, that I was receiving an award for academic achievement, while Serafina was prancing around in a tutu in a hobby my father was financing. But I didn't scream. I just nodded, grabbed my car keys to my beat-up Honda that barely ran, and drove myself to the ceremony. I sat in the audience surrounded by families, by parents who had shown up for their kids, and when my name was called and I walked across that stage to receive my certificate, I looked out at the empty seats where my family should have been and felt something inside me crack. They got home around 9:30 laughing and talking about how wonderful Serafina had been. Dad actually ruffled her hair and said, "That's my girl, you're going to be something special." He said it right in front of me, this proclamation of pride and ownership that he had never, not once since Mom died, directed at me. I was standing there with my certificate in my hand, and he walked right past me without asking how the ceremony went. Serafina looked at me, then really looked at me and smiled. It was a smile of pure victory. She had won, and we both knew it. The next major blow came a few months later, right before my 18th birthday. I had been having problems with my teeth for years. They were crooked, crowding in front, and it had always bothered me. Mom had noticed too, and we'd talked about getting braces once money allowed. After she died, I'd let it go, but by the time I was 17 and looking at senior portraits and college applications, it was bothering me again. I finally worked up the courage to ask Dad about it. We were in his study. He was going over some paperwork. I knocked on the doorframe and he waved me in absently. "Dad," I started, my voice small. "I wanted to ask you about something. My teeth. They're getting worse, and I was wondering if we could maybe look into braces. Just regular ones, not anything expensive." He looked up at me over his reading glasses, and I saw calculation in his eyes. "Anya, braces are expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. With everything going on with the house expenses and Serafina's activities, we just don't have that kind of money right now. I need you to be realistic about what we can afford." I nodded. I accepted it. I told myself it made sense. Money was tight. I could wait. Maybe I could get braces after college when I had a job. It was fine. 2 months later, Cassandra took Serafina to an orthodontist. 2 weeks after that, Serafina came home with Invisalign. Not regular braces. Invisalign. The clear, expensive cosmetic kind that cost twice as much as traditional braces. I was in the kitchen when Serafina came home from her fitting, smiling wide to show off her new aligners. Cassandra was cooing over her, talking about how beautiful her smile was going to be, how worth it this investment was. I stood at the counter, frozen, a half-made sandwich forgotten in front of me. "I thought we didn't have money for orthodontics," I said quietly. Dad, who had just walked in, stiffened. Cassandra turned to me with a patient smile, the kind you give a small child who's being unreasonable. "Serafina's teeth are much worse than yours, honey. She really needed this. It's a medical necessity. Your teeth are just a little crooked. It's barely noticeable." Serafina's teeth were perfectly straight. Everyone in the room knew it. The lie hung there in the air, and nobody contradicted it. That was the moment I started to understand that this wasn't about money. It had never been about money. It was about priority. It was about who mattered and who didn't. And I didn't. Then came the college situation, the betrayal that would eventually lead me to leave home entirely. I was a senior, and college applications were in full swing. I had done everything right. I had maintained a 4.2 GPA. I had taken AP classes. I had volunteered. I had written essays until my fingers cramped. I applied to state schools' practical choices with good programs and reasonable tuition. In March, I got my acceptance to State University with a partial academic scholarship that covered about 60% of costs. I would need approximately $15,000 per year for the remaining tuition room and board. It wasn't Harvard, but it was my dream. It was my escape. It was the future Mom had promised me. I did my research. I put together a comprehensive presentation with a breakdown of all costs, my scholarship amount, potential work-study programs, and a plan for how I could contribute by working summers. I requested a family meeting. This was important. This was my future. Surely they would see that. I sat down with Dad, Cassandra, and even Serafina at the dining room table on a Sunday afternoon in late March. I presented my acceptance letter, my scholarship offer, and my financial breakdown. I had practiced this speech for days. "I know college is expensive," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But with my scholarship, we're only looking at about $15,000 a year. I can work during school through work study and full-time in the summers. I can take out some small loans. I just need help with the gap. I've calculated that if I work part-time during the year and full-time in the summer, I can probably cover about $5,000. So I'm asking for $10,000 in family support annually." Dad didn't even look at the papers I'd so carefully prepared. He shook his head slowly. "Anya, I don't think you understand what you're asking. $10,000 is a lot of money, and it's not just 1 year, it's 4 years. We're talking about $40,000 total." He paused, exchanged a glance with Cassandra. "And honestly, sweetie, I'm not sure college is the right path for you. Not everyone is cut out for higher education. Some people just aren't built for that kind of academic pressure. Your mom and I always worried that you were pushing yourself too hard. Maybe this is a sign that you should consider other options." I stared at him. "You and Mom worried I was pushing myself too hard. Mom was the one who encouraged me to take advanced classes. She was the one who started a college fund for me when I was born. She always talked about my future, my education." My voice was rising, something desperate and angry bubbling up. Cassandra jumped in smoothly. "Your mother, bless her, had a lot of dreams for you. But dreams aren't always realistic. You're a bright girl, Anya, but college isn't for everyone. There are trade schools, certificate programs, jobs that don't require a degree. You could become a dental hygienist or a medical secretary, respectable careers that don't cost $40,000. "What happened to my college fund?" I asked suddenly. The question had been nagging at me for months, but I'd been too afraid to voice it. Mom showed me the statements. There was money saved. What happened to it? The silence that followed was deafening. Dad cleared his throat. "That money was needed for other things. The house, bills. Life happens, Anya. That money's gone. Just gone. My entire future saved penny by my mother, just gone. Absorbed into the general household fund that paid for Serafina's ballet lessons and Cassandra's shopping trips and God knows what else." I left that meeting in a daze. I went to my room and cried until I couldn't breathe. 3 months later, I overheard a phone conversation that shattered what little remained of my illusions about this family. I was passing by Dad's study when I heard him on the phone with his financial advisor. "Yes, I'd like to set up an education trust for Serafina. She's 13 now, so we have 5 years to maximize the growth before she starts college. I'm thinking we should aim for about $50,000 total. That should cover a good portion of whatever school she chooses. She's a bright kid, probably looking at some private colleges." $50,000 for Serafina, who was 13, who had years to go before college, who barely maintained a B average. While I, with my 4.2 GPA and my acceptance letter and my scholarship, was told that $10,000 a year was too much to ask. I made a decision that night. I was done. I was done hoping they would see me. I was done hoping my father would remember that I was his daughter, too. I was done competing with Serafina for scraps of attention and affection. I started making plans to leave. I had been working part-time at a grocery store since I was 16, saving every penny I could. I had about $3,000 saved. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The final straw came a month before I turned 20. I had been living at home working full-time at the grocery store during the day and picking up shifts at a coffee shop in the evenings. I was exhausted and miserable, but I was saving money. My plan was to save enough to move out and maybe take community college classes part-time. Dad and Cassandra barely acknowledged my existence. I was like a ghost in that house, coming and going without comment. One evening, I came home from my shift at the coffee shop around 10. My clothes smelled like espresso and my feet ached. I just wanted to take a shower and collapse into bed, but when I walked into the house, I heard laughter from the living room. Curious despite my exhaustion, I peeked in. Dad, Cassandra Serafina, and little Willow, who was about 8 at this point, were all gathered around the coffee table. There was a cake with candles, balloons, presents. It was Serafina's 14th birthday, and I hadn't even known there was a celebration planned. They hadn't told me. Nobody had mentioned it. I wasn't invited to my own family's gathering in my own house. I stood there in the doorway, and Cassandra looked up and saw me. For a moment, genuine discomfort flashed across her face. "Oh, Anya, we didn't expect you home so early. We're just having a little birthday thing for Serafina." A little birthday thing that had clearly been planned with decorations and a cake and wrapped presents. "Nobody told me," I said quietly. Dad shifted uncomfortably but didn't look at me. Serafina smirked. Willow, sweet Willow, who was still young enough to have some empathy, looked between me and the adults with confusion on her face. "Why didn't anyone tell Anya?" she asked in her small voice. "She's family, too." "Willow, hush," Cassandra said sharply. Then to me, "You're welcome to join us, of course. I just didn't think you'd be interested. You're always so busy with work." I wasn't welcome. The message couldn't have been clearer. I turned and went up to my room, and that night I cried for the last time over this family. I was done crying. I was done hoping. I was done existing on the margins of their lives, apologizing for taking up space, grateful for scraps of attention. I left a week later on a Tuesday morning while everyone was out. Dad was at work. Cassandra had taken Serafina shopping for school clothes. Willow was at a friend's house. I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda. It wasn't much. Clothes, books, my laptop, some photos of Mom. I took one last walk through the house where I'd grown up, where I'd been happy with my mother, and where I'd learned what it felt like to be erased. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just locked the door behind me and drove away. I saw Willow as I was pulling out of the driveway. She had come home early and was standing at her bedroom window watching me load the last boxes into my car. Our eyes met. She pressed her hand against the glass. I could see tears on her cheeks. She was only 8, and she understood more than the adults did. She understood that something wrong was happening, that the family was broken, that I was leaving and might not come back. I raised my hand in a small wave, and then I drove away. I moved into a studio apartment above a laundromat in a part of town Dad would never visit. The rent was $450 a month. The place was tiny, maybe 300 square feet, with a bathroom so small you could sit on the toilet and wash your hands in the sink at the same time. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors arguing, having sex, watching TV. The laundromat below me ran until midnight, so the building hummed with the sound of industrial washers and dryers. Heat was inconsistent. The hot water lasted about 7 minutes, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I had a space that was entirely mine. Nobody could take it away from me. Nobody could make me feel like I didn't deserve to be there. The next 5 years were the hardest of my life. I worked constantly. Mornings I opened at a coffee shop at 5 a.m., making lattes and breakfast sandwiches for commuters. Afternoons, I worked at a call center doing customer service for an insurance company, answering the same questions over and over while people yelled at me about their premiums. Evenings, I picked up shifts wherever I could, babysitting, dog walking, cleaning houses. I lived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever mistakes I could take home from the coffee shop. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. I walked everywhere to save on gas. Every single penny went into savings. But here's what they didn't understand, what Dad and Cassandra and Serafina could never understand. I was happy. For the first time since Mom died, I was building something that was mine. Nobody could take credit for it. Nobody could diminish it. Nobody could tell me I didn't deserve it. I was surviving on my own terms, and that feeling was worth more than any of the comfort I'd left behind. Around this time, I started freelancing. I had always been good at design, at understanding what made people pay attention. In high school, I'd designed posters for events, helped friends with their social media, created flyers for local businesses for free just to build a portfolio. Now I started charging for it. My first client was a coffee shop, not the one I worked at, but a competitor across town. They needed help with their social media presence. They were posting sporadically with no clear brand voice, and their engagement was terrible. I charged them $200 for a month of content strategy and design. I delivered a complete brand overhaul, new logo concepts, a content calendar, caption templates, and a cohesive visual aesthetic. Their weekend traffic tripled. Word spread. One client led to another. A boutique needed help with their Instagram. A real estate agent wanted a website redesign. A local gym needed promotional materials. I worked on these projects late at night after my other jobs, surviving on coffee and pure determination. I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, but I was building something. By the time I was 22, I had enough clients that I could quit the call center. By 23, I quit the coffee shop too. I incorporated as Brookline Creative, taking my mother's maiden name because I couldn't bear to use Thorn. Not yet. Not when that name was associated with so much pain. My business grew faster than I could have imagined. I was good at what I did. Really good. I understood branding messaging, what made people connect with a company. I could take a struggling business and give them an identity that resonated. Within a year of incorporating, I had a team of 3 contractors working with me. Within 2 years, we were managing accounts worth 6 figures annually. I moved out of the studio above the laundromat and into a real apartment, one with a bedroom and heat that worked consistently. I bought furniture, real furniture, not stuff from Craigslist or curbside. I started building a life that looked like success. When I was 24, I landed the contract that changed everything. Thorn Energy Corporation, a regional energy company that ironically shared my father's last name, though we were no relation, was facing a public relations crisis. Fracking concerns, environmental protests, a reputation as a soulless corporation that cared more about profits than people. They needed a complete image overhaul. The contract was worth $300,000 more money than I'd ever seen in my life. They chose my bid over 3 much larger agencies because, as the CEO told me later, I was the only one who didn't try to hide what they were. Instead, I built a campaign around transparency, community investment, and transitioning toward sustainable practices. The campaign was a massive success. Their public approval ratings went up 30 points. Protests decreased. They started getting positive press for the first time in years. Thorn Energy Corporation was so pleased they offered me a permanent retainer and introduced me to other companies in the energy sector. Within 6 months, I had pivoted. Brookline Creative became Thorn Energy Creative, specializing in media and branding for energy companies. We weren't hiding what we did anymore. We weren't pretending to be something small and scrappy. We were a serious media consulting firm, and I was the CEO. By the time I was 25, we were bringing in over $1 million annually. I hired a full-time staff. I rented office space in a decent building downtown. I started getting invited to industry conferences to speak about brand rehabilitation and transparent marketing. I was featured in local business magazines. People knew my name. Not Victor Thorne, the father who had rejected me. Anya Thorne, the woman who had built something from nothing. The acquisition of Channel 9 OKC came when I was 26. The local television station was struggling, hemorrhaging money, on the verge of closing. They needed a buyer with deep pockets and media expertise. I had both. I bought the station for $1.8 million, restructured their operations, and brought in Damon Cross to manage it. Damon was someone I'd met at a media conference, a sharp operator with a background in broadcast journalism and business management. He was tired of working for corporate media conglomerates and wanted to be part of something more innovative. I offered him the general manager position with a generous salary and the freedom to implement new ideas. He accepted. Channel 9 became a subsidiary of Thorn Energy Creative. It was still primarily a local station, but we improved their programming, their news coverage, their community engagement. We started making profit within a year. More importantly, we created a model that could be replicated. I started looking at other struggling local stations in other markets. The plan was to build a network. By the time I was 27, Thorn Energy Creative was worth $12 million annually. I had 30 employees. We had clients across 3 states. I bought a loft downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick. I drove a Tesla. I wore designer clothes to meetings. I had built an empire, and I had done it entirely on my own without a cent of help from my father, without anyone's approval or support. Every single brick of this empire was laid by my hands, built on my ideas, funded by my labor. And through all of this, I had almost no contact with my family. Dad called maybe twice a year, awkward conversations where he asked surface-level questions about my life, and I gave surface-level answers. He never asked about my business. He never asked if I was happy. The calls felt like obligation, like he was checking a box. Cassandra never called at all. Willow sent me a Facebook friend request when she was 13, and we had occasional exchanges, mostly her sharing memes and me sending encouraging messages about school. She was a sweet kid caught in the middle of a toxic dynamic, and I tried to be a positive presence in her life, even from a distance. Serafina I heard about through various channels. She had gone to college, some private liberal arts school that cost $60,000 a year. Dad and Cassandra paid for all of it. She majored in communications, which made me laugh bitterly. Of course she did. She graduated with mediocre grades and a sense of entitlement, then floundered for a year trying to find a job. Eventually, she landed a position at Channel 9 OKC. I didn't know about it at first. Damon handled all the hiring for local staff, and he had no reason to flag the name Serafina Thorne to me. We weren't connected on social media. We didn't speak. I had no idea she was working at my own subsidiary company. She started as a junior account coordinator, essentially an entry-level position. Her job was to coordinate client communications schedule, social media posts, and assist the senior account managers with whatever they needed. It was basic work that required organizational skills and attention to detail. According to Damon, she was mediocre at it. Not terrible, but not impressive. She showed up, did the minimum, and spent a lot of time networking and trying to seem more important than she was. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known until much later, was that Serafina had access to my old files. When I first started Brookline Creative, I had used a shared cloud storage account for my work. It was a free account, nothing fancy, and I hadn't thought much about security because I was just a freelancer working with small local clients. After I incorporated and started working with bigger companies, I moved everything to a professional secure server. But I had never gone back and deleted the old shared cloud account. I had simply abandoned it, assuming nobody would care about years-old files from small local projects. Serafina, snooping or savvy or both, somehow gained access to that old cloud account. Maybe I had mentioned it years ago in the house, back when I was still living there. Maybe she found old login information in a drawer or a file somewhere. However she did it, she got in and she found years of my early work. Campaigns for small businesses, brand designs, social media strategies, website mock-ups, promotional materials, all of it original, all of it created by me, all of it carefully time-stamped and saved with my notes and drafts. And she started stealing it. Not all at once, not obviously, but piece by piece over months and then years, she took my ideas and presented them as her own. She would take a campaign I'd designed for a small local boutique, change a few colors or words, and present it as an original concept for one of Channel 9's clients. She took my social media strategies and pitched them in meetings as if she'd thought of them. She took my designs and had them reproduced with slight modifications. The truly diabolical part was that she was smart enough to choose campaigns that had been for very small local clients who had no connection to the television world. A coffee shop in a neighborhood across town, a yoga studio that had closed a year later, a real estate agent who had since retired. Nobody at Channel 9 had ever seen this work before because it had been done years earlier for clients operating in completely different spheres. There was no reason for anyone to suspect plagiarism, and it worked. Serafina's reputation grew. She was promoted to account manager, then senior account manager. She started winning awards for her creative campaigns. Industry recognition. She became known as an innovative thinker, someone who really understood local marketing and community engagement. Her LinkedIn profile glowed with accomplishments. Dad and Cassandra were so proud. Their daughter, the rising star in media. Everything they'd always known she would become. I knew none of this. I was busy running a multi-million-dollar company, acquiring new properties, expanding into new markets. Channel 9 was just one small piece of a much larger puzzle, and I trusted Damon to handle operations. I reviewed quarterly reports and annual performance, but I wasn't looking at individual employee accomplishments. I had no reason to. I found out by accident, and the discovery came from my mother, or rather from what my mother left behind. 3 weeks before that fateful BBQ, I got a call from a real estate agent. Dad had decided to sell Mom's old house, the one where I'd grown up, the one he'd been renting out for years. The tenants had moved out, and he wanted to sell while the market was good. But there were still some old belongings in the attic, things from when our family had lived there. The real estate agent asked if I wanted to go through them before everything was hauled away. Most of it would be donated or trashed, but she thought I might want to see if there was anything of sentimental value. I almost said no. The thought of going back to that house, of walking through rooms filled with memories of Mom and the life we'd had before everything fell apart, was painful. But something made me agree. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was a desire for closure. Maybe Mom was guiding me somehow, reaching out from beyond to give me one last gift. I went on a Saturday afternoon. The house felt smaller than I remembered, shabbier. The neighborhood had declined a bit. The oak tree in the front yard where I used to climb was huge now, its branches reaching toward the roof. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time before I could make myself go inside. The attic was hot and dusty, filled with boxes that hadn't been opened in years. Most of it was junk. Old tax documents, broken Christmas decorations, clothes that smelled like mothballs. But in the back corner, I found a small fireproof box that I recognized. It had been Mom's, something she kept important documents in. Inside were her birth certificate, her and Dad's marriage license, my birth certificate, and at the very bottom a small USB drive with a label written in Mom's handwriting. Anya's work backup 2019 to 2023. My hands shook as I held it. Mom had died in 2020. This backup went through 2023, which meant she had set up some kind of automatic backup system before she died. She had been protecting my work, preserving it, creating a paper trail without telling me. Even sick, even dying, she had been thinking about my future, about protecting me. I took the USB drive home and plugged it into my laptop. What I found made my blood run cold and my heart race. It was everything. Every campaign, every design, every creative brief, every pitch deck I had created during my first years of freelancing. The files were meticulously organized by date by client, with clear timestamps and metadata intact. And as I scrolled through them, as I looked at campaigns I'd almost forgotten about, I started to feel a sick sense of recognition. I'd seen these before. Recently, in award announcements, in Channel 9's annual report, in promotional materials celebrating their creative department's success. I opened my laptop side by side with my work computer and started cross-referencing. Campaign after campaign, I found matches. My work created years ago for small local clients reproduced almost exactly for Channel 9's accounts. Sometimes the colors were changed, sometimes the wording was slightly different, but the concepts, the layouts, the core ideas were identical. And every single one of them was credited to Serafina Thorne. I sat at my desk in my beautiful loft, looking out at the city lights, and felt the world tilt on its axis. My stepsister, the golden child, the one who had been given everything while I received nothing, had built her entire career on my stolen work. She had taken 5 years of my creativity, my innovation, my labor, and passed it off as her own. She had won awards for my ideas. She had gotten promotions based on my talent. She had been celebrated for my accomplishments while I had been erased. The betrayal was breathtaking in its completeness. It wasn't enough that she'd gotten the childhood I'd deserved, the support, the opportunities, the love. She'd also taken my professional success and claimed it as her own. I called Zara immediately. Zara Khan had been my roommate during my worst years, back when I was living above that laundromat and working 3 jobs to survive. She had been getting her degree in computer science while working at a tech repair shop, and we'd bonded over our shared exhaustion and determination to build better lives. She'd gone on to become a forensic technology specialist, working with law firms and companies to analyze digital evidence. If anyone could verify what I was seeing, it was her. "I need you to look at something," I said without preamble when she answered. "I need you to tell me I'm not losing my mind." 2 days later, Zara came to my apartment with her laptop and a grim expression. She had spent 48 hours analyzing the USB drive, cross-referencing timestamps, examining metadata, tracing digital footprints, and comparing my original work to the campaigns Serafina had claimed. "Anya," she said, setting her laptop on my coffee table and pulling up screen after screen of analysis. "This is ironclad. 5 years of systematic intellectual property theft. She didn't just take a few ideas, she created a pattern. She found your old work and systematically mined it for her own advancement." Zara showed me the timeline she'd constructed. It was damning. Campaign after campaign, my creation dates on one side, Serafina's submission dates on the other. Months or years later, she would take my work and present it. The metadata told the whole story, an irrefutable digital paper trail. "This could stand up in any court," Zara said. "And honestly, Anya, this goes beyond just stealing ideas. This is career fraud. She's built her entire professional reputation on your work. Every promotion, every award, every job opportunity she's gotten has been based on a lie." I stared at the evidence, feeling something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. For years, I had told myself that leaving was enough, that building my own success was enough, that being better than them, being stronger, being independent was the ultimate revenge. But looking at this evidence, I realized it wasn't enough. Because while I had been building something real, Serafina had been stealing from me, coasting on my talent and being celebrated for it. And my father, who had told me I wasn't cut out for college, who had denied me support for my education, who had made me feel like a failure and a burden, was probably so proud of her. "What do you want to do?" Zara asked quietly. I thought about that question for a long time. I thought about the girl who had eaten peanut butter sandwiches while watching her stepsister get heart-shaped lunches. I thought about the teenager who had driven herself to her academic awards ceremony alone. I thought about the young woman who had been denied braces while watching her stepsister get Invisalign. I thought about watching my college fund disappear while Serafina got a $50,000 trust. I thought about leaving that house with nothing, building a life from scratch, surviving on determination and spite. And I thought about Serafina, who had been handed everything, taking even more. "I want justice," I said finally. "I want her to face consequences. For once in her privileged, entitled life, I want Serafina to face real consequences for her actions." Zara nodded. "Then let's do this right. We need to document everything, prepare a comprehensive report, and figure out the best way to present this evidence." We worked for the next 2 weeks building an airtight case. Zara prepared a forensic analysis that would stand up to any scrutiny. I compiled every piece of evidence, every original file, every timeline. I reached out to Damon and scheduled a confidential meeting. I told him I had discovered something serious regarding an employee and needed to discuss it in person. Damon met me at my office after hours. I laid out everything: the USB drive, the forensic analysis, the side-by-side comparisons, the timeline of theft. I watched his face go from confused to shocked to furious. "She's been submitting stolen work to me for 2 years, he said, his voice tight. "I've been praising her, promoting her, putting her on important accounts, and it's all been plagiarized." "From me," I said quietly. "She stole from me. She's built her career at my company on my property using my ideas." Damon ran his hands through his hair. "This is a legal nightmare. This is grounds for immediate termination, possibly criminal charges. Every client she's worked with could potentially sue us for fraud. Every award she's won could be revoked. This could damage the station's reputation." "I know," I said, "but it needs to be dealt with. And Damon, I want to be the one to do it. I want to confront her directly." He looked at me for a long moment. "This is personal for you. She's not just an employee who committed fraud. She's your stepsister." "She's the stepsister who got everything I should have had," I said, and my voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. "She's the person my father chose over me, supported over me, loved over me, and even that wasn't enough. She had to steal from me, too. So, yes, it's personal, and I want her to know exactly who she stole from." We spent the next few days preparing. Legal reviewed everything and confirmed we had grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action. We prepared documentation, severance terms, and a cease and desist order. We alerted security. We made sure everything was by the book because this couldn't be about personal revenge. It had to be about professional consequences for professional misconduct. And then the universe handed me the perfect opportunity. 3 days after my meeting with Damon, my phone buzzed with a text message from Serafina, the first direct contact in over 2 years. "Hey, Anya, having a family BBQ this Saturday at Dad's house. You should come, bring a dessert or something. Oh, and my boss Damon will be there. He's super successful. You'd probably find him interesting. See you at 2. I read that message 3 times, feeling something between fury and disbelief. The casual tone, the presumption that I would come, the condescending instruction to bring dessert as if my role was to provide supporting services, and the mention of my boss Damon, whom she clearly wanted to parade around as evidence of her success and connections. She had no idea that Damon reported to me. She had no idea I owned the company she worked for. She had no idea that I knew everything she'd done. I texted back one word. Sure, I didn't bring dessert. I brought my laptop, the USB drive, and a portable projector. I also called Damon and briefed him on the situation. His response was immediate and satisfying. "I'll be there, and Anya, it will be my genuine pleasure to fire her in front of everyone she's been trying to impress." Saturday arrived. I spent the morning preparing, going over my presentation, making sure every piece of evidence was queued up and ready. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple but expensive dress, understated jewelry, and my Tesla for the drive. I wanted to look successful, professional, unshakable. I wanted them to see what I'd become despite them. I arrived at Dad's house at 2 o'clock sharp. The place was even more impressive than I remembered from brief glimpses over the years. Sprawling estate in the suburbs, professionally landscaped, the kind of house that screamed money. The circular driveway could have fit 6 cars. The front entrance had columns. This was the house my father bought while telling me we couldn't afford my college tuition. I parked my Tesla right in front, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked to the backyard where I could hear voices and music. The scene was picture perfect. Enormous patio with an outdoor kitchen, professional-grade grill, expensive outdoor furniture, string lights, a bar cart with top-shelf liquor. Dad was at the grill wearing an apron that said, "Grill Master." Cassandra was holding court with neighbors, her laugh loud and practiced. Willow was in a corner on her phone, and Serafina was the center of attention, golden and glowing, in a designer dress that probably cost more than a month of rent at my first apartment. When she saw me, her expression flickered. Surprise, definitely, a hint of annoyance, but she covered it quickly with a bright fake smile. "Anya, you made it!" Her voice carried across the patio, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Where's the dessert? I asked you to bring something." Every eye turned to me. I felt the weight of their judgment, their assumption that I had failed yet again to meet expectations. I set my laptop bag down on the outdoor dining table. "I brought something better." Serafina's smile faltered slightly, but before she could respond, Damon arrived. I watched her entire demeanor shift. She practically glowed, rushing over to him and linking her arm through his with proprietary confidence. "Everyone," she called out, making sure she had an audience. "This is Damon Cross. He's the regional director at Channel 9, and he's been such an amazing mentor to me." She pulled him toward the center of the patio gathering, and I watched her bask in the attention, the impressed murmurs, the approving looks. Dad actually wiped his hands on his apron and came over looking at Damon with newfound respect. "So you're the one who's been helping our Serafina shine," he said, pride evident in his voice. That's when I opened my laptop. I had already scoped out the setup earlier. Dad had a large outdoor television mounted on the covered patio, something he used for watching sports. I walked over and connected my laptop to it before anyone quite realized what I was doing. The screen flickered to life, enormous and impossible to ignore. Everyone turned to look. Conversations died. Serafina's smile froze. "Anya?" she said, her voice strained. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just pulled up my presentation. The screen split into 2 windows side by side. On the left, my original work. Campaign designs, social media strategies, promotional materials, all with clear timestamps, metadata, and my digital signature visible. On the right, the exact same campaigns uploaded to Channel 9's servers months or years later, credited to Serafina Thorne. The silence was absolute. I clicked through slide after slide, each one showing another stolen campaign. 5 years of systematic theft displayed in undeniable detail. Original creation dates on one side, submission dates on the other. My work her credit. over and over and over again. Dad's mouth fell open, his grill tongs hanging forgotten in his hand. Cassandra's wineglass tilted, forgotten red wine beginning to drip onto the white tablecloth. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, not sure where to look. Willow stood up from her corner, her phone falling from her hands and hitting the concrete with a crack screen shattering. And Serafina lunged forward, panic transforming her face into something ugly. "Turn that off!" she shrieked. "What are you doing, Dad? She's trying to ruin me. This is insane. Make her stop." But Damon stepped between us, his body blocking her from reaching my laptop. His voice was cold and professional, cutting through her panic like a knife. "That's company property, Serafina. Step back." He turned to face the assembled crowd, and I could see calculation in his eyes. He was thinking about optics, about how this would look, about controlling the narrative. "For those who don't know me," he said, his voice carrying authority, "my name is Damon Cross. I'm the general manager of Channel 9 OKC, but I don't operate independently. I manage the local branch of Thorn Energy Creative, a media consulting conglomerate worth approximately $12 million annually." He paused, letting that sink in, then continued. "Anya Thorn is the founder and CEO of Thorn Energy Creative. She built this company from nothing over the past 7 years. Channel 9 is one of her properties. I report directly to her. I always have." The silence that followed was suffocating. You could have heard a pin drop. The string lights swayed gently in the breeze. Someone's drink glass sweated condensation. A bird called from somewhere in the neighbor's yard. And every single person in that backyard was staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to dawning horror. Cutting off toxic family isn't about revenge. It's about liberation. Serafina learned that actions have consequences. Victor learned that privilege has limits. Cassandra learned that loyalty shouldn't be blind. Willow learned that families can be rebuilt on honesty rather than hierarchy. And I learned that blood doesn't excuse betrayal. I learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from everything you've ever known and build something new from scratch. I learned that family isn't an obligation you're born into, but a choice you make every day about who deserves access to your life, your energy, and your love. The empire I built is mine. Every brick, every contract, every success. It's built on my work, my innovation, my refusal to disappear. Victor never saw my potential because he never looked. Cassandra never valued me because I wasn't her child. Serafina never respected me because she thought I was beneath her. They were all wrong, and now they know it. Now everyone knows it. I think about my mother sometimes, about that USB drive she left behind. She knew. Even when she was sick, even when she was dying, she was protecting me. She was creating a paper trail of evidence that would someday save me. She believed in me when no one else did, and I honored that belief by building something she would have been proud of. Something real. Something mine. Cutting off toxic family gave me something I never thought I'd have. Peace. Self-respect. A life lived on my own terms. I don't owe them forgiveness. I don't owe them access. I don't owe them anything. And that realization, that simple truth, set me free. The girl who ate peanut butter sandwiches wrapped in brown paper while watching her stepsister eat heart-shaped lunches is gone. The girl who rode the bus while her stepsister drove a Mustang is gone. The girl who was told she wasn't good enough for college while mediocrity was rewarded with trust funds is gone. In her place is a woman who built an empire from nothing, who fought back when it mattered, and who finally put herself first. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? Have you ever realized that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones hurting you the most? Drop a comment and let me know your story. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible or undervalued or forced to shrink yourself to make others comfortable, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone. Your story matters, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself.